I raised my nephew for 15 years, then my brother said I kidnapped them. The legal papers trembled in my hands as I read the words that made my blood run cold. Petition for emergency custody alleging kidnapping and unlawful retention of minor children. Kidnapping. My brother Marcus was actually claiming I kidnapped his children. I sat in my Honda Civic outside the courthouse, staring at documents that painted me as some kind of criminal mastermind who had somehow orchestrated the disappearance of 3 kids 15 years ago. The same 3 kids I'd picked up from a roach-infested apartment in 2009 when Marcus disappeared for 6 months, leaving Emma, Jake, and little Sophie with nothing but empty cereal boxes and overdue eviction notices. Emma was 8 then, Jake was 6, and Sophie had just turned 4. I remember Sophie still wearing the same stained Dora the Explorer shirt for 3 days straight because it was the only clean thing she had. Now she's 19, a sophomore at State University studying pre-med, and Marcus wants to claim credit for that. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Aunt Sarah, did you see the news article? I can't believe he's actually doing this. The news article. Of course there was a news article. Marcus had always been good at controlling narratives. Local business owner fights to reclaim children after 15-year battle, the headline read. It painted him as some kind of reformed hero, a successful entrepreneur who had struggled with personal demons but was now ready to reunite his family. What it didn't mention was the $2.3 million he'd made selling his tech startup last year. What it didn't mention was that his first phone call to me in 3 years wasn't to check on his kids, it was to ask if I'd kept any of their birth certificates because he needed them for tax purposes. I pulled into my driveway and sat there for a moment, looking at the modest 2-story house I bought in 2011. It wasn't much, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a kitchen with appliances I bought secondhand, but it was ours. I'd stretched my teacher's salary to the breaking point to afford the mortgage, working summer jobs tutoring and substitute teaching just to keep up with 3 growing kids' needs. The front door opened and Jake appeared on the porch. At 21, he had Marcus's height but none of his reckless energy. Jake was steady, reliable, working part-time at the auto shop while finishing his mechanical engineering degree. He'd gotten a full scholarship, thank God, because my savings account had exactly $847 left after helping Sophie with her tuition last semester. Aunt Sarah? Jake's voice was tight with worry. Sophie called. She's driving down from campus. And Emma's coming over after work. I looked at this young man I'd raised, who called me every Sunday just to check in, who still brought me coffee in bed on my birthday like he'd been doing since he was 12. Marcus wanted to take credit for this? For the character and kindness I'd watched Jake develop through years of homework help, scraped knees, teenage heartbreaks, and countless conversations about right and wrong? Good, I said, getting out of the car with the legal papers clutched in my hand. We need to talk. Because Marcus had made one crucial mistake in his calculated legal strategy. He assumed his children, and they were his children, biologically, would want to come back to him. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. Inside the house, I spread the legal documents across my kitchen table, the same scratched wooden table where we'd done homework for over a decade, where I'd served countless birthday breakfasts, where Jake had built his first computer and Emma had practiced for debate team. Now it was covered with papers that could tear our family apart. The doorbell rang at 6:47 p.m. Emma walked in first, still wearing her bank teller uniform, her face flushed with anger. At 23, she'd inherited Marcus's stubborn streak, but she'd channeled it into fierce loyalty and determination instead of destruction. I've been doing research all afternoon, she announced, pulling out her laptop. Did you know he's been telling people he sent you money all these years? His business partner posted on Facebook congratulating him for finally getting his kids back after supporting them from afar. My stomach dropped. He never sent a dime, Emma. You know that. I know that. Jake knows that. Sophie knows that. But he's building a narrative. Emma's fingers flew across her keyboard. Look at this, he's got photos on his Instagram from some charity event last month. The caption says, proud father working to reunite with my children after overcoming personal struggles. Jake leaned over her shoulder, his jaw clenched. That's the same week he didn't return Sophie's call about needing help with her car repair. Remember? She had to take out a credit card cash advance for $800 because she'd already covered her textbooks. The front door opened again, and Sophie burst in like a whirlwind. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she was wearing the State University sweatshirt I bought her for Christmas. My heart ached looking at her, this brilliant, driven girl who'd been potty trained on my watch, who'd cried in my arms through her first heartbreak, who called me every time she had a panic attack during finals week. I can't believe this, Sophie said, her voice shaking. My roommate saw the article and asked if I was excited to go live with my real dad. Real dad? Where was my real dad when I had pneumonia in 3rd grade and you slept in that uncomfortable hospital chair for 4 nights straight? I remembered those nights. The way Sophie's tiny hand had gripped mine, how I'd sung her the same lullabies I'd been singing since she was 4. Marcus had been unreachable then, his phone number disconnected, no forwarding address. There's something else, Emma said quietly. I called Mom. The room went silent. My mother, Marcus's mother too, lived in Florida now. She'd watched Marcus's downward spiral with the same helpless frustration I had, but she'd also seen me step up when he couldn't. What did she say? I asked. She said Marcus called her 2 weeks ago asking for character references. He wanted her to write a letter saying he'd been working on himself and was ready to be a father. Emma's expression was grim. She told him she'd think about it. Then she asked him Sophie's birthday. And? He guessed October. Sophie's birthday is March 15th, Aunt Sarah. The same day every year for 19 years, and he doesn't even know when his own daughter was born. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. He missed every birthday, every Christmas, every graduation. Every single milestone that mattered. And now he wants to show up because he has money? Jake put his arm around his younger sister. The legal papers say he's requesting immediate custody pending a full hearing. Can he actually do that? I looked at the 3 faces staring at me, these children who'd become my children through choice, sacrifice, and unconditional love. Marcus might have DNA on his side, but I had something stronger. I had 15 years of proof that biology doesn't make you a parent. Showing up does. Aunt Sarah, Emma said, pulling up another screen on her laptop, there's more. I found his court filing details online. He's not just asking for custody, he's requesting back child support from you. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? He's claiming that since you never had legal guardianship, you were essentially providing unauthorized care, and now you owe him $127,000 in child support payments he should have been receiving from the state. I sank into my chair, the enormity of it washing over me. Not only was Marcus trying to take the kids, he was trying to financially destroy me in the process. On a teacher's salary of $52,000 a year, $127,000 might as well have been $1 million. That's insane, Jake said, his voice rising. He's the one who disappeared. He's the one who never paid anything. But that's the problem, I said quietly, finally understanding Marcus's strategy. I never made it legal. I was so focused on just getting you 3 stable, getting you fed and clothed and enrolled in school, that I never went through the proper channels. I kept thinking he'd come back, that it would be temporary. Sophie wiped her eyes. So legally, what does that mean? Before I could answer, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but something made me answer. Sarah Chen? The voice was crisp, professional. Yes? This is Jennifer Walsh from Child Protective Services. I understand there's been a custody dispute filed regarding 3 minors who have been in your care. I need to schedule a home visit for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. My blood went cold. Tomorrow? But the kids are adults now, except Sophie Chen Martinez is still 19 and listed as a dependent on your tax returns, which makes her a minor in the eyes of the court until she's 21 or legally emancipated. Mr. Martinez has requested an immediate welfare check. Martinez. Marcus had legally changed his last name to his ex-girlfriend's surname, probably for business reasons. Another detail that showed how little we knew about his life now. Of course, I managed. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. is fine. When I hung up, 3 pairs of worried eyes stared at me. CPS is coming tomorrow, I said. They're treating this like an active child welfare case. Emma's laptop chimed with a new email notification. She glanced at the screen and her face went white. Aunt Sarah, you need to see this. She turned the laptop toward me. The email was from Marcus himself, or rather, from his lawyer's office, but clearly dictated by him. The subject line read, formal notice of intent to pursue criminal charges. My hand shook as I read. Asterisk Ms. Chen. My client, Marcus Martinez, is prepared to pursue criminal kidnapping charges unless his children are returned to his custody immediately. Mr. Martinez has evidence that you systematically alienated his children from him and prevented contact during his recovery period. We have witness statements confirming that you told school officials and medical providers that you were the children's legal guardian when no such documentation exists. Asterisk. Furthermore, my client is prepared to file a civil suit for emotional distress and lost parental rights, seeking damages in excess of $500,000. You have 48 hours to arrange a meeting to discuss voluntary custody transfer. Asterisk sincerely. David Chen, attorney at law. No relation. Asterisk. The irony of the lawyer sharing my last name wasn't lost on me. Nothing about this situation was. He's trying to scare you into giving up, Jake said, reading over my shoulder. It's working, I admitted. The legal fees alone would bankrupt me, even if I won. And Marcus knew that. Sophie stood up abruptly. I'm not going anywhere with him. I don't care what the courts say. I'm 19 years old, and I choose where I live. Sophie. No, Aunt Sarah. You've been my mom for 15 years. You taught me to drive, you helped me with calculus, you held my hair back when I had the flu. You're the one who believed in me when I wanted to quit pre-med last semester. Her voice was fierce, determined. If he thinks money and DNA trump that, he's about to learn exactly what kind of people you raised. Emma closed her laptop with a decisive snap. We need a lawyer. A good one. With what money? I asked. With whatever it takes, Jake said firmly. We'll figure it out. Looking at their faces, determined, angry, loyal, I realized Marcus had made a critical miscalculation. He thought he was fighting me. He was actually fighting all 4 of us. And we'd been a family too long to go down without a fight. The next morning at 8:45 a.m., I stood in my living room straightening throw pillows that didn't need straightening, my hands trembling with nervous energy. The CPS home visit was in 15 minutes, and I'd been awake since 4 a.m. mentally rehearsing everything I wanted to say. Emma had taken a personal day from the bank and sat at the kitchen table with a thick manila folder. Okay, I've organized everything chronologically, she said, her voice steady despite the dark circles under her eyes. School enrollment records, medical records, tax returns showing us as dependents, even old grocery receipts from 2009 and 2010. Why grocery receipts? Sophie asked. She'd driven down from campus again, missing her organic chemistry lab. Because they show Aunt Sarah buying diapers, formula, and children's Tylenol during the months when Marcus was supposed to be our primary caregiver, Emma replied. Sophie, you were still in Pole UPS when he disappeared that first time. These receipts prove who was actually taking care of you. Jake walked in from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. I moved my car and cleaned up the driveway. Figured we should look as normal as possible. He paused. Whatever normal means when your deadbeat dad is trying to have your aunt arrested. At exactly 9 a.m., a silver Toyota Camry pulled into our driveway. Jennifer Walsh turned out to be younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with kind eyes but a professional demeanor that gave nothing away. She wore a simple navy blazer and carried a leather portfolio that looked well used. Ms. Chen? I'm Jennifer Walsh. Her handshake was firm. Thank you for accommodating the short notice. Of course. These are Emma, Jake, and Sophie. I gestured to the kids, my kids, who stood in a neat line like they were about to be inspected. Ms. Walsh's eyebrows rose slightly. Emma and Jake are over 18, correct? 23 and 21, Emma confirmed. We're here by choice. I see. Ms. Walsh made a note. And Sophie, you're 19? Yes, ma'am. Sophomore at State University, majoring in pre-med with a 3.8 GPA. Sophie's voice was polite but had an edge to it. Ms. Walsh looked around our living room, taking in the family photos covering every available surface. 15 years of birthday parties, graduations, Christmas mornings, and random Tuesday afternoons. Pictures of me teaching Jake to ride a bike, Emma in her high school prom dress, Sophie blowing out candles on a homemade cake. Mr. Martinez claims that he's been trying to maintain contact with his children for years but that you prevented it, Ms. Walsh said, consulting her notes. He's provided some documentation suggesting he sent letters and attempted phone calls. My stomach clenched. What kind of documentation? Printed email records showing attempts to reach you, dating back to 2015. Phone logs from his current cell provider. Emma and I exchanged glances. Ms. Walsh, Emma said carefully, could I see those dates? Ms. Walsh consulted her tablet. The emails show attempts in March 2015, June 2017, September 2019, and February 2021. March 2015 was when I got into State University, Sophie said immediately. June 2017 was Jake's high school graduation. September 2019 was when Emma bought her first car. February 2021 was when I made Dean's List. Ms. Walsh looked up sharply. I'm sorry? He only reached out during major milestones, Jake explained. Never for birthdays, never during emergencies, never just to check in. Only when we achieved something he might want to take credit for. And Ms. Chen, Ms. Walsh turned to me. Do you have records of receiving these communications? I never received any emails or calls on those dates, I said firmly. But I have something else. I pulled out my phone. I have our phone bill records going back to 2010. And Emma has our old email accounts printed out. If he called or emailed, there would be a record. Ms. Walsh made another note. Mr. Martinez also claims that you told the children negative things about him, essentially alienating them from their father. You want to know what alienated us? Sophie's voice cracked. Waking up when I was 4 years old and finding out he'd left in the night. Again. Or being told by other kids at school that they saw him at the casino when he was supposed to be in rehab. Or watching Aunt Sarah work 2 jobs every summer just to keep us in school clothes. Sophie, I warned gently. No, Aunt Sarah. She needs to hear this. Sophie turned back to Ms. Walsh. He didn't just leave once. He left 6 different times between 2009 and 2013. The longest he stayed was 4 months. I have anxiety attacks now because I'm terrified of people disappearing. That's what he did to us. Ms. Walsh was writing quickly now. And you've been in continuous care with Ms. Chen since 2009? Yes, all 3 kids said simultaneously. Mr. Martinez claims he was paying informal child support during his absence, Ms. Walsh continued. Emma opened her folder. We have 15 years of bank statements. Every deposit, every withdrawal, every source of income. Our aunt supported us entirely on her teacher's salary. The only money that ever came from Marcus was $200 in 2011, and that was because his mother made him send it. Ms. Walsh spent the next hour going through our documentation, interviewing each of us separately, and inspecting the house. She looked at Sophie's bedroom, still decorated with posters from her high school years, college textbooks stacked on the desk I bought her junior year. She saw Jake's old room, now converted to a home office but with his high school wrestling trophy still displayed on the shelf. When she was finished, Ms. Walsh sat down across from us in the living room. I have to ask, if Mr. Martinez is willing to provide substantial financial support now, and if he's genuinely reformed, would that change anything for any of you? The silence stretched for a long moment. Finally, Sophie spoke. Ms. Walsh, would you leave your mom to go live with a stranger who happened to share your DNA? Ms. Walsh's professional mask slipped for just a second, and I saw something that looked like understanding cross her face. I'll have my report filed by tomorrow morning, she said, standing up. The judge will review it before the preliminary hearing next week. After she left, we sat in the living room, emotionally drained. Do you think she believed us? Sophie asked. Before I could answer, Emma's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and her face went pale. He's escalating, she said quietly. Marcus just posted on Facebook that CPS confirmed his children are living in an unstable environment and he's fighting for their safety. The post already had 37 likes and 12 comments of support. We weren't just fighting a custody battle anymore. We were fighting a PR war. I was staring at Marcus's Facebook post when my doorbell rang at 10:30 p.m. Through the peephole, I saw a woman I didn't recognize, mid-40s, blonde hair, expensive-looking coat. Sarah Chen, she asked when I opened the door. I'm Rebecca Martinez. Marcus's partner. My stomach dropped. This was the woman whose last name he'd taken, whose money had probably funded his legal crusade. I know this is awkward, she continued, but I was hoping we could talk. Just the 2 of us. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She sat on the edge of my couch like she might need to make a quick escape, clutching a designer purse that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Marcus doesn't know I'm here, she said immediately. And if he found out, he wouldn't be happy. Then why are you here? Rebecca looked around the room, taking in the same family photos Ms. Walsh had studied that morning. Her eyes lingered on a picture from Sophie's high school graduation, all 4 of us grinning, Sophie in her cap and gown between me and her siblings. Because I've been living with him for 3 years, and he's never once mentioned having children, she said quietly. Not until 6 months ago when his business sold. Suddenly he's talking about his kids and how he needs to step up as a father. It didn't make sense. My hands clenched in my lap. What exactly are you telling me? I did some digging. Found old court records from 2010 in Nevada. Did you know he was arrested for writing bad checks? He used one of the kids' social security numbers to open a credit card. Sophie's, I think. The room tilted. What? $3,400 in charges before they caught him. It's why he left Nevada so fast. Rebecca reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. I printed everything I could find. There's also a warrant in Arizona from 2014 for failure to appear on a child support case. Child support? But he never. Not for your kids. For a daughter in Phoenix. Apparently he was married briefly in 2013. Rebecca's voice was barely above a whisper. Sarah, I don't think you know the whole story about who Marcus really is. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. The documents painted a picture of a man I'd never fully known, multiple arrests, defaulted loans, a pattern of using other people's identities and then disappearing. There was even a restraining order filed by a woman named Lisa Hoffman in 2016. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. Because I have a 12-year-old son from my first marriage. And watching Marcus prepare for this custody battle, the way he talks about his property and what he's owed, it scares me. She met my eyes. He doesn't want those kids back because he loves them. He wants them because he's decided they're successful now, and he thinks he deserves credit. Will you testify to any of this? I can't. The prenup I signed has a non-disclosure clause about his personal business. Rebecca stood up, smoothing down her coat. But those documents are public record. Anyone could find them if they knew where to look. After she left, I sat alone in my living room at midnight, surrounded by evidence of Marcus's lies. The man trying to take my children had been living a double life, leaving destruction in multiple states. My phone buzzed. A text from Jake: Aunt Sarah, check Emma's Facebook. Marcus's post backfired. I logged in to see that Emma had responded to Marcus's post with a simple comment: This is Sophie Martinez. I'm 19 years old and I choose to live with the woman who raised me. Anyone who wants to know the real story can call me directly. The post had 127 comments now, and they weren't all supportive of Marcus anymore. But the most important message was from an unknown number. Ms. Chen, this is David Kim from the State Public Defender's Office. I've been following your case. Can we talk tomorrow? I think I can help. For the first time in days, I felt something that might have been hope. The meeting with David Kim from the Public Defender's Office was scheduled for 2 p.m., but at 11:30 a.m., my world shifted again. I was grading papers in my classroom during lunch when Principal Morrison knocked on my door, his expression grim. Sarah, we need to talk. District office called this morning. My stomach dropped. What's wrong? Marcus Martinez contacted Superintendent Williams directly. He's claiming you've been fraudulently claiming his children as dependents on benefits applications. He wants an investigation into whether you've been receiving unauthorized compensation. The stack of essays in my hand scattered to the floor. For 15 years, I'd claimed Emma, Jake, and Sophie on my health insurance through the district. I'd received a small dependent care stipend, maybe $200 a month total, that helped offset childcare costs. All of it legal as long as I was their primary caregiver, but Marcus was painting it as fraud. Tom, you know I've been raising those kids since 2009. HR approved everything back then. I know that, and you know that. But the district has to investigate any allegation of benefits fraud. You're going to be placed on administrative leave pending review. Administrative leave. No pay. Right when I needed every penny for legal fees. How long? Could be weeks. Maybe months if this goes to court. Principal Morrison's voice was apologetic but firm. Sarah, I've watched you sacrifice everything for those kids. But my hands are tied. I drove home in a daze, my 15-year teaching career suddenly hanging by a thread. Marcus wasn't just trying to take the kids, he was systematically destroying every aspect of my life. At 2 p.m. sharp, David Kim arrived at my house. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a briefcase that had seen better days. But his handshake was confident, and his eyes were sharp. Ms. Chen, I've been reviewing your case, and I have to be direct. Marcus Martinez has built a nearly airtight legal strategy. He's claiming parental rights that technically never ceased, and you're operating without legal guardianship. So we can't win? I didn't say that. David pulled out a thick folder. I said his strategy is good. But he made one crucial error: he waited too long. There's a legal precedent called abandonment by conduct that might apply here. Hope flickered in my chest. What does that mean? If we can prove that Marcus's absence was so prolonged and complete that he effectively abandoned his parental rights, the court might terminate them involuntarily. David spread several documents across my kitchen table. But we need ironclad proof of abandonment and evidence that his return would be detrimental to the children. We have 15 years of documentation. That's good. But Marcus has something we don't: money for expert witnesses, investigators, and character rehabilitation. David's expression was serious. He's hired Thompson, Walsh and Associates. They're the best family law firm in the state. Their retainer alone is probably more than your annual salary. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Sophie's number, but when I answered, her voice was shaky and wrong. Aunt Sarah? I'm at the campus police station. Marcus showed up at my dorm. My blood turned to ice. What? He had some kind of private investigator with him. They were asking my roommate questions, taking pictures of my room. Campus security got involved when other students started calling it in as harassment. David was already standing, grabbing his briefcase. We need to go. Now. Sophie, stay right where you are. Don't talk to anyone except campus police until we get there. Aunt Sarah, there's more. The investigator had photos, pictures of our house, of you dropping me off at school, of Jake at work. He's been watching us. The 40-minute drive to State University felt like hours. David explained that Marcus was building a case for parental interference, documenting my daily involvement in the kids' lives as evidence that I'd systematically excluded him. It's a common tactic, David said as we pulled into campus. Make the primary caregiver look controlling and manipulative while painting the absent parent as a victim. At the campus police station, Sophie looked smaller than her 19 years, sitting in a plastic chair with her arms wrapped around herself. Officer Martinez, the irony of the name wasn't lost on me, explained what had happened. 2 men approached multiple students in the dormitory, claiming to be conducting a family wellness check. When questioned, they produced some kind of court document that appeared to give them investigative authority. Can I see it? David asked. The document was clever, it looked official but was actually just a motion filing, not a court order. Marcus's lawyers had crafted something that would intimidate college students but had no real legal weight. This is harassment, pure and simple, David said. We can file a restraining order. Will it work? Maybe. But restraining orders are tricky in custody cases. Judges don't like parents who try to limit the other parent's access. David's phone buzzed, and his expression darkened as he read the message. We have another problem. Marcus just filed an emergency motion claiming Sophie is being held against her will. Sophie's eyes went wide. That's insane. I called you myself. It doesn't matter. He's requesting an immediate custody hearing for tomorrow morning. If the judge grants it. He didn't need to finish. If Marcus got emergency custody, Sophie would be legally required to go with him immediately. David, I said quietly, how much time do we have to build our case? If the judge denies the emergency motion? Maybe 2 weeks until the full hearing. And if he grants it? David met my eyes. Then we lose everything tomorrow. That night, I sat in Sophie's dorm room helping her pack, not because she was leaving, but because we decided she needed to stay with Emma until the legal situation was resolved. Campus wasn't safe anymore. As I folded her clothes, I found a letter tucked between her textbooks. My name was on the envelope, written in Sophie's careful handwriting. What's this? Sophie's cheeks flushed red. I wrote it last week, after Emma told us about the legal papers. I wanted you to have something, in case. My hands trembled as I opened it. Asterisk Aunt Sarah. I don't know how to say this right, but you need to know that you're the only mother I've ever really had. I know Marcus is my biological father, but DNA doesn't make someone a parent. Love does. Sacrifice does. Showing up every single day does, asterisk. You've been showing up for 15 years. Asterisk if the court makes me go with him, I want you to know that it won't change anything. You'll still be my mom. He'll still be a stranger who shares my last name, asterisk. I love you more than all the stars in the sky, just like you used to tell me when I was scared of the dark. Asterisk your daughter, in every way that matters. Sophie asterisk. I was still crying when my phone rang at 11 p.m. The number was blocked, but I answered anyway. Sarah? The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it immediately. Yes? This is Michael Chen, the lawyer representing Marcus. We need to talk. The phone call from Marcus's lawyer at 11 p.m. felt like a trap, but I couldn't hang up. Not when Sophie was sitting across from me in her dorm room, her letter still clutched in my trembling hands. Mr. Chen, it's rather late for a professional call, I managed. Please, call me Michael. And you're right, this isn't exactly professional. His voice was quieter than I'd expected, lacking the aggressive tone from his earlier correspondence. I'm calling because I have a 14-year-old daughter, and after reviewing your case files today, I needed to speak with you directly. I put the call on speaker so Sophie could hear. I'm listening. Marcus showed me the documentation Rebecca Martinez provided to you. My blood ran cold. What? She's my client too, has been for 2 years. The prenup, the non-disclosure agreement. I drafted them. Michael's voice was strained. What she didn't tell you is that she's been secretly recording conversations with Marcus for months. She's been building her own case. Sophie leaned forward, her eyes wide. Recording him saying what? Things that would make any judge question his fitness as a parent. But Sarah, there's something else. Marcus doesn't know Rebecca came to see you, and he doesn't know about the recordings. If he finds out, what aren't you telling me? I asked. Michael was quiet for a long moment. Marcus has been physically aggressive with Rebecca twice in the past 6 months. Once when she questioned his spending, once when she asked about his children. She has photos of bruises, medical records from an urgent care visit. The room felt like it was spinning. Why are you telling me this? Isn't this a conflict of interest? Probably. I'll likely have to recuse myself from Marcus's case after this call. Michael's voice was resolute. But I keep thinking about my own daughter. If something happened to me and my ex-wife, I'd want whoever stepped up to raise her to fight like hell to keep her safe. Sophie grabbed my hand, her eyes filled with tears. There's more, Michael continued. The emergency custody hearing tomorrow, Marcus is planning to bring Sophie directly to his house afterward. He's already cleaned out a bedroom, installed security cameras, and changed all the locks. Rebecca thinks he's planning to isolate her from all of you. Can he do that legally? If he gets emergency custody, he can control who Sophie sees and when. And Sarah, he's been researching boarding schools. Expensive ones. Far away. My heart stopped. Boarding school? He told Rebecca that Sophie needs structure and distance from negative influences, meaning you and her siblings. He's not planning to be a hands-on father. He wants to warehouse her somewhere he can control her while taking credit for her achievements. Sophie stood up abruptly, pacing to her window. I won't go. I don't care what any judge says. Sophie, if you run, he can have you declared a runaway. That would actually strengthen his case, Michael warned. But there might be another option. What? Rebecca has agreed to testify about Marcus's behavior, the domestic violence, the financial fraud. But she needs protection, a restraining order, witness protection status. And she needs to file for divorce and get out of that house before Marcus realizes what's happening. I processed this information, my mind racing. What do you need from us? Meet me at the courthouse tomorrow at 7 a.m., 1 hour before the emergency hearing. I'll have Rebecca there with her recordings and documentation. We're going to present it all at once, not just Marcus's abandonment of his children, but evidence that he's currently unfit and potentially dangerous. Will it work? Honestly? I don't know. Marcus has spent a lot of money on this case, and judges are reluctant to completely deny parental rights. But if we can get the emergency motion dismissed and buy time for a full investigation. Sophie turned from the window. Mr. Chen, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you really think he wants me back because he loves me, or because he wants to control the narrative about his success? Michael's silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, he spoke. Sophie, in 20 years of family law, I've never had a client spend $50,000 on a custody case and not once ask about his children's interests, their grades, their health, or their happiness. Every conversation with Marcus has been about his rights, his reputation, and what he's owed. After we hung up, Sophie and I sat in the quiet of her dorm room, the weight of tomorrow pressing down on us. Aunt Sarah, what if the judge doesn't believe us? What if he decides DNA matters more than everything else? I looked at this brilliant, brave girl who'd been mine in every way that mattered for 15 years. Tomorrow, a stranger in black robes would decide if our family could stay together. Then we'll figure out what comes next, I said, pulling her into a hug. But Sophie, no matter what happens in that courtroom, you are my daughter. That's not something any judge can change. At 5:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, courthouse parking lot. Now. Come alone. Rebecca. The real battle was about to begin. I grabbed my keys and drove to the courthouse in the pre-dawn darkness, my heart hammering against my ribs. The parking lot was nearly empty except for a black sedan with its hazard lights blinking. Rebecca stepped out as I pulled up, but she wasn't alone. Michael Chin was with her, and both of them looked like they hadn't slept. We have a problem, Rebecca said immediately, clutching a tablet to her chest. Marcus knows I took the recordings. My stomach dropped. How? He found the recording app on my phone an hour ago. He's been calling me nonstop since 3 a.m., threatening to have me arrested for illegal wiretapping. Her hands were shaking. But that's not the worst part. Michael stepped forward, his expression grim. Marcus called in a favor with Judge Patterson. They play golf together apparently. The emergency hearing has been moved up to 8 a.m. instead of 9, and the judge is allowing Marcus to present new evidence of parental interference. What new evidence? Rebecca held up her tablet, showing me a video that made my blood freeze. It was security footage from Sophie's dorm building, timestamped yesterday at 6:47 p.m. The video showed me walking into the building, but it had been edited to make it look like I was sneaking around, checking over my shoulder. He's claiming you coached Sophie to lie about wanting to stay with you, Michael explained. The video makes it look like you're manipulating her. That's insane. I was helping her pack because campus wasn't safe after his investigator showed up. We know that. But edited correctly, it supports his narrative that you're controlling and manipulative. Michael checked his watch. We have 45 minutes before the hearing, and Marcus just added 3 new witnesses to his list. What witnesses? Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. Our housekeeper, my personal trainer, and Marcus's business partner. He's been preparing them for weeks, telling them stories about how tragic it's been that he couldn't see his children, how much he's missed them, how he's been fighting Sarah's interference. I felt the walls closing in. So 3 people are going to testify that Marcus is a devoted father who's been kept from his children? It gets worse, Michael said. Marcus filed a motion this morning requesting that Sophie not be allowed to testify on her own behalf. He's claiming she's been brainwashed and her testimony would be coached and unreliable. The parking lot was starting to fill up with early courthouse staff. In 30 minutes, Sophie's entire future would be decided, and Marcus had systematically dismantled every advantage we thought we had. What about the recordings Rebecca made? Without proper disclosure, they might not be admissible. And even if they are, Marcus's lawyer will claim they were taken illegally. Michael ran his hands through his hair. Rebecca, are you absolutely certain you want to do this? Once you testify against Marcus, there's no going back. Rebecca looked at me, then at the courthouse where Sophie's fate would be decided. I've been married to him for 3 years, and I just realized I don't know him at all. But I've been watching Sarah fight for these kids, and I know exactly who she is. She pulled out her phone and showed me a text message that had arrived at 4:23 a.m. from Marcus. If you testify against me, I'll make sure you lose your son too. Don't test me, Rebecca. He's threatening your 12-year-old? I asked, horrified. My ex-husband lives in Portland. Marcus has been researching custody laws in Oregon. Rebecca's voice was steady, but her hands trembled. He thinks he can destroy both our families. Michael's phone buzzed. The judge is ready early. We need to go in now. As we walked toward the courthouse, I thought about Sophie, probably awake in Emma's apartment, waiting to hear if her life would be turned upside down by a man who didn't even know her birthday. Michael, I said quietly, what are our actual chances? He stopped walking and looked me directly in the eyes. Honestly? 30%. Maybe less. And if we lose today? Marcus gets immediate custody. Sophie would have to go with him this afternoon. I thought about the security cameras he'd installed, the boarding schools he'd been researching, the way he'd systematically isolated Rebecca from her own support system. Then we better make those 30% count. But as we climbed the courthouse steps, I couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus was 3 steps ahead of us, and we were walking into a trap he'd spent months preparing. The real question wasn't whether we'd win or lose. It was whether Sophie would ever forgive me if I couldn't protect her from the man who'd thrown her away 15 years ago. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, with fluorescent lighting that made everyone look sickly. Judge Patterson was younger than I'd imagined too, maybe 50, with silver hair and the kind of expensive watch that suggested Marcus's golf connections ran deeper than Michael had realized. Sophie sat in the gallery behind us, flanked by Emma and Jake who'd driven down at dawn. She wore the navy blazer I bought her for college interviews, looking professional but terrified. Every few minutes, she'd catch my eye and I'd try to smile reassuringly, even though my hands were shaking so badly I had to keep them clasped in my lap. Marcus entered at 7:58 a.m. with his legal team, 3 lawyers in suits that probably cost more than my car. He'd lost weight since I'd last seen him, his dark hair now styled professionally, wearing clothes that screamed success. For a moment, he looked like the responsible older brother I'd grown up with, before addiction and abandonment had carved lines of selfishness into his face. He didn't look at Sophie. Not once. Your Honor, David Kim began, standing at our table, this emergency motion is based on false premises and manipulated evidence. Mr. Martinez abandoned his children for over a decade, and now. Objection, interrupted Marcus's lead counsel, a sharp-faced woman named Victoria Walsh. Mr. Martinez was struggling with addiction and seeking treatment. Ms. Chen took advantage of his vulnerable state to alienate his children. Judge Patterson held up his hand. I'll hear opening statements, then we'll review evidence. Ms. Walsh, proceed. What followed was a masterclass in legal manipulation. Victoria Walsh painted Marcus as a recovering addict who'd been trying to reconnect with his children for years, only to be blocked by my possessive and controlling behavior. She presented the edited video of me at Sophie's dorm as evidence of manipulation, phone records showing attempted contact that I'd allegedly ignored, and financial documents suggesting I'd profited from caring for Mr. Martinez's children. Your Honor, she concluded, Mr. Martinez is now financially stable, emotionally healthy, and ready to provide his daughter Sophie with opportunities Ms. Chen simply cannot match. He's prepared to pay for her medical school tuition in full, provide a stable home environment, and restore the father-daughter relationship that Ms. Chen has systematically destroyed. My heart sank as Judge Patterson nodded thoughtfully. The presentation was slick, professional, and completely divorced from reality, but it sounded convincing. David Kim stood for our response, but before he could speak, the courtroom doors opened. Detective Sarah Williams from the County Sheriff's Department walked in, followed by a woman in a CPS uniform I didn't recognize. Your Honor, Detective Williams said, I apologize for the interruption, but new evidence has come to light that directly pertains to this case. Judge Patterson frowned. Detective, this is highly irregular. Yes, sir, but we received a report this morning about potential witness intimidation and threats against a minor. She looked directly at Marcus, whose face had gone pale. We also have a warrant to search Mr. Martinez's residence based on allegations of domestic violence and fraudulent identity use. The courtroom erupted. Marcus shot to his feet, his lawyers frantically whispering, and Sophie grabbed Emma's hand so tightly her knuckles went white. Your Honor, Victoria Walsh said urgently, this is clearly a desperate attempt to derail legitimate custody proceedings. Sit down, Ms. Walsh. Judge Patterson's voice cut through the chaos like ice. Detective Williams, what evidence are you referring to? Rebecca Martinez filed a formal complaint at 6 a.m. this morning, providing recordings of her husband threatening both her minor son and the children in this custody dispute. She also provided evidence of Mr. Martinez using his daughter's social security number to open fraudulent credit accounts in 2010. Marcus was now whispering frantically with his lawyers, but I could see sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool courtroom air. Additionally, Detective Williams continued, we've discovered that Mr. Martinez has outstanding warrants in 2 states for failure to pay child support, not for these children, but for a daughter in Arizona he's never acknowledged in this custody filing. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Judge Patterson looked from Marcus to Sophie to me, his expression unreadable. Ms. Walsh, did your client disclose any of this information during your case preparation? Victoria Walsh looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Your Honor, Victoria Walsh said carefully, my client disclosed his past struggles with addiction, but these other allegations are. Are you telling me, Judge Patterson interrupted, his voice deadly quiet, that your client failed to mention active warrants, identity theft involving his own children, and threats of violence against witnesses in this case? Marcus finally stood, his composure cracking. Your Honor, these are all misunderstandings. My ex-wife Rebecca is obviously being coached by. Sit down, Mr. Martinez. The judge's tone could have frozen fire. Detective Williams, I want to see this evidence immediately. What happened next felt like watching a controlled demolition. Rebecca took the witness stand and, with Michael Chen's guidance, played 3 recordings that destroyed every lie Marcus had built his case on. The first recording was from 2 weeks ago, Marcus laughing with his business partner about those kids finally being worth something and how he planned to cash in on their success. The second was Marcus coaching Rebecca on what to tell people about his years of trying to reconnect with his children. The third recording made my stomach turn, Marcus detailing his plan to send Sophie to a boarding school in Switzerland where she couldn't be influenced by Sarah's middle-class mentality. She's got potential, Marcus's voice crackled through the courtroom speakers. Pre-med, good grades. But she's been poisoned against me. A year or 2 in Europe, away from Sarah's influence, and she'll see things differently. Plus, if she's in school overseas, I can claim her as a dependent without actually having to deal with teenage drama. Judge Patterson stopped the recording. Mr. Martinez, you're telling me you want custody of your daughter so you can immediately send her to another continent? Your Honor, that's taken out of context. The context seems quite clear. Judge Patterson turned to Sophie. Young lady, I'd like to hear from you directly. Do you wish to live with your father? Sophie stood slowly, her voice shaking but determined. No, Your Honor. I don't know that man. The woman who raised me is sitting right there. She pointed to me. She's been my mother for 15 years. She taught me to drive, helped me with homework, held my hair when I had the flu. She worked 2 jobs to pay for my school supplies and stayed up all night when I was scared. Marcus Martinez is a stranger who shares my DNA. And if I ordered you to live with him? Sophie's voice grew stronger. Then I'd respect the court's decision, but I'd count the days until I turned 21 and could come home to my real family. Marcus's face flushed red with anger. Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of manipulation I've been talking about. She's been brainwashed. Mr. Martinez, Judge Patterson's voice cut him off. I've heard enough. Detective Williams, what's the status of your investigation? Active and ongoing, Your Honor. We'll need Mr. Martinez to come with us for questioning regarding the outstanding warrants and the witness intimidation charges. The courtroom fell silent as the implications sank in. Marcus looked from his lawyers to Detective Williams to Sophie, his carefully constructed facade finally crumbling. Your Honor, David Kim said quietly, given these developments, we respectfully request that the emergency custody motion be denied and Mr. Martinez's parental rights be reviewed in light of the criminal investigation. Judge Patterson was quiet for a long moment, studying the evidence spread across his bench. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured but firm. Emergency custody motion denied. Mr. Martinez, you have 10 minutes to speak with your attorneys before Detective Williams escorts you for questioning. This court will reconvene in 2 weeks for a full hearing on the termination of parental rights. As the gavel fell, Sophie collapsed into Emma's arms, sobbing with relief. Marcus was led away in handcuffs, still protesting his innocence. I sat frozen in my chair, hardly believing it was over. But as I watched Detective Williams lead Marcus past Sophie without him even glancing in her direction, I realized something important. It had never really been about getting his children back. It had always been about winning. 2 weeks after Marcus was arrested in the courthouse, I thought we'd won. The criminal charges were moving forward, Sophie was safely back at school, and I'd been reinstated at work with a formal apology from the district. But on a rainy Thursday evening in November, everything changed again. I was grading papers at my kitchen table when Emma called, her voice tight with panic. Aunt Sarah, you need to get to the hospital. Now. What happened? Is someone hurt? It's Rebecca Martinez. She's in the ICU at St. Mary's. She was in a car accident this afternoon, but... Emma's voice cracked. The police think someone tampered with her brakes. My blood turned to ice. Marcus was out on bail, and Rebecca had been the star witness whose testimony destroyed his custody case. Is she going to be okay? They don't know yet. But Aunt Sarah, there's more. Detective Williams wants to talk to all of us tonight. She thinks Marcus might have helped someone with money and connections who's still working to intimidate witnesses. I arrived at the hospital to find Detective Williams pacing in the waiting room, her face grim. Sophie had driven down from campus again, and Jake was there still wearing his work clothes from the auto shop. Rebecca's in critical condition, Detective Williams explained. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, but she's stable. The accident happened on Riverside Drive. Her car went straight through the guardrail into the creek. You said someone tampered with her brakes? I asked. Brake lines were cut clean through. Professional job. This wasn't random. Detective Williams consulted her notes. But here's what's interesting, Marcus was in lockup when it happened. He's got a solid alibi. Emma leaned forward. So someone else is involved? That's what we think. Rebecca's been getting threatening calls since Marcus was arrested, but they're not coming from him directly. Detective Williams showed us her phone. We traced the calls to a burner phone purchased with cash in downtown Portland. Someone's coordinating this. Sophie grabbed my hand. Do you think they'll come after us next? Before Detective Williams could answer, her phone rang. She listened for a moment, her expression growing darker. We have another problem, she said, hanging up. Marcus's business partner, Richard Chen, just liquidated 3 offshore accounts totaling $800,000. He's also booked a private flight to Costa Rica leaving tomorrow morning. The pieces clicked together in my mind. Richard Chen, that's Michael's brother, isn't it? The lawyer who helped us? Different Chen family, but yes, they know each other professionally. Detective Williams was already texting someone. Richard's been Marcus's silent partner in the tech business, and apparently in this custody scheme too. We think Marcus promised him a cut of any settlement money if they could prove you'd been receiving fraudulent benefits all these years. Jake stood up abruptly. So this was never just about getting Sophie back. It was about money? A civil lawsuit against Sarah could have been worth millions if they'd won, Detective Williams confirmed. Fraudulent benefits, emotional distress, lost parental rights, they were planning to sue the school district, the state, anyone who'd helped Sarah care for you kids without proper legal guardianship. My head was spinning. For 15 years, I'd focused on just surviving day by day, making sure the kids were fed and clothed and loved. I'd never realized that my informal arrangement could be twisted into something that looked criminal to the right lawyer. Detective, what does this mean for our safety? I asked. Richard's desperate now. With Rebecca's testimony and the evidence she provided, both he and Marcus are looking at serious prison time. Desperate people make dangerous choices. Sophie's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Drop the charges or more accidents will happen. We all stared at the message in the bright hospital light, the antiseptic smell suddenly making me nauseous. We're putting you all in protective custody, Detective Williams said immediately. Tonight. The protective custody safe house was a bland 2-bedroom apartment across town that smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and broken dreams. Sophie sat on the generic beige couch, her organic chemistry textbook unopened in her lap, while Emma paced between the kitchenette and living room like a caged animal. Jake stood at the window, occasionally peering through the blinds at the unmarked police car parked outside. This is insane, Emma muttered for the 10th time in an hour. We're hiding from Marcus's business partner like we're in some kind of witness protection program. Detective Williams had been clear when she dropped us off at midnight. Richard Chen was still in the wind, the private jet to Costa Rica had been a decoy, and the threatening text to Sophie had been traced to a location just 3 miles from campus. Someone was watching us, tracking our movements, and escalating their threats. My phone rang at 8:47 a.m. The caller ID showed St. Mary's Hospital. Ms. Chen? This is Dr. Patricia Vance. I'm calling about Rebecca Martinez. My stomach clenched. Is she okay? She's conscious and asking for you specifically. She says she has information about Richard Chen that could help the police case, but she'll only share it with you present. 20 minutes later, I sat beside Rebecca's hospital bed while she struggled to speak through swollen lips and a jaw that had been wired shut. Her tablet was propped on the bedside table, and she was typing slowly with her uninjured left hand. Asterisk Sarah Richard has been planning this for 8 months. Found emails on Marcus's laptop asterisk. What kind of emails? Detective Williams asked, leaning closer. Asterisk are promised Marcus $2 million if they could prove fraud case against you. Had private investigator following you since March asterisk. My hands went cold. Following me since March? But Marcus only contacted us about custody in September. Rebecca typed more slowly, wincing with each movement. Asterisk March was when Sophie made Dean's List. Article in campus newspaper mentioned your name as guardian. That's when they started planning asterisk. Detective Williams frowned. Planning what, exactly? Asterisk full financial destruction. Lawsuit against school district for allowing fraudulent benefits. Criminal charges for identity theft, claiming you stole kids' identities to get money asterisk. The room felt like it was spinning. Identity theft? I raised them. Everything I did was to take care of them. Asterisk I know. But Richard found loophole. Without legal guardianship, every official document you signed could be considered forgery asterisk. Detective Williams was taking notes rapidly. Rebecca, where is Richard now? Asterisk don't know location but he is meeting tomorrow 2 p.m. Warehouse District on Industrial Avenue meeting with someone called Judge P about final payment asterisk. My blood went cold. Judge P? As in Judge Patterson? The judge who handled our emergency hearing? Rebecca's eyes went wide, and she started typing frantically. Asterisk Marcus said Judge was paid $50,000 to rule in his favor. When case fell apart, Richard demanded money back asterisk. Detective Williams was already on her radio, calling for backup and surveillance teams. Rebecca, is there anything else? Any other threats or plans you know about? One more thing, Rebecca's typing was getting weaker, but her message made my heart stop. Asterisk Richard said if custody case failed completely, there was plan C, make Sarah disappear and claim kids were abandoned again. Marcus would get custody by default asterisk. The machines monitoring Rebecca's vitals started beeping faster, and a nurse rushed in to check on her. That's enough for now, the nurse said firmly. She needs rest. As we left the hospital, Detective Williams was coordinating with multiple agencies. We've got surveillance on Industrial Avenue, a warrant for Richard Chen's arrest, and we're investigating Judge Patterson's financial records. What about us? I asked. Are we safe? We're moving you to a different location tonight. And Sarah? She stopped walking and looked me directly in the eyes. This ends tomorrow. One way or another, Richard Chen's plan stops at that warehouse meeting. But as we drove back to the safe house, I couldn't shake Rebecca's final message that she typed just as we were leaving. Richard desperate now. Watch your back tonight. Someone was coming for us, and I was running out of ways to protect the only family I'd ever known. The warehouse meeting was set for 2 p.m., but at 11:30 a.m., everything went sideways. I was making coffee in the safe house kitchenette when Detective Williams burst through the door, her face pale with urgency. We need to move. Now. What happened? Sophie asked, looking up from her textbook. Richard Chen didn't wait for the meeting. He's coming here. Detective Williams was already grabbing our bags. A patrol unit spotted his rental car 2 blocks away 15 minutes ago. He's got someone with him. My hands started shaking as I processed this. How did he find us? We're still figuring that out, but right now we need to get you somewhere else. She was herding us toward the door when her radio crackled. Williams, this is Unit 47. Suspect vehicle is parked outside the Starbucks on 5th Street. 2 occupants, one matches Richard Chen's description. They're watching the apartment building with binoculars. Emma grabbed my arm. Aunt Sarah, they can see us from there. Detective Williams peered through the blinds carefully. They're silver Toyota Camry. Richard's in the passenger seat, and there's someone else driving. Someone we haven't identified yet. Jake moved to the back window. There's another car behind the building. Black SUV. This isn't just surveillance, they're surrounding us. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Walk out the front door alone in 5 minutes or we start shooting through the windows. Detective Williams read the message over my shoulder and immediately called for backup. All units to 1247 Oak Street. We have an active threat situation with potential hostages. 5 minutes, Sophie whispered, checking the time on her phone. What happens in 5 minutes? Before Detective Williams could answer, the building's fire alarm started blaring. Through the window, I could see smoke beginning to pour from the first floor. They set a fire, Jake said grimly. They're forcing us out. Detective Williams was coordinating with multiple units on her radio, but the message was clear. Backup was at least 8 minutes away, the fire department was en route, and we had maybe 3 minutes before the smoke forced us to evacuate. There's a service elevator in the back, Detective Williams said. If we can get to the parking garage. Her radio crackled again. Williams, suspect vehicle is moving. They're heading toward the building's rear exit. We were trapped. Fire below, armed men outside, and nowhere to run. That's when Emma did something that surprised everyone. She grabbed Detective Williams' spare radio and spoke directly into it. Richard Chen, this is Emma Martinez. I know you can hear police frequencies. Emma, what are you doing? I hissed. She held up her hand. Richard, you want money? Fine. But you're doing this all wrong. Sarah doesn't have any money, she's a teacher. But we do. Detective Williams tried to grab the radio, but Emma stepped away. Jake's got a $50,000 scholarship fund he hasn't touched. Sophie's got college savings. I've got investment accounts for my banking job. Emma's voice was steady, businesslike. Total liquid assets? Maybe $200,000. That's real money you can actually get, not some fantasy lawsuit that'll take years. The radio was silent for a long moment. Then a male voice responded, you have 2 minutes to prove it. Bank statements, account numbers. Emma, you can't negotiate with them, Detective Williams warned. But Emma was already pulling out her phone, opening her banking app. I can transfer $75,000 right now to any account you want. Jake and Sophie can do the same from their accounts. That's cash in hand today, not some legal battle that might fail. Sophie caught on immediately and opened her own banking app. I've got $43,000 in my education savings account. It's real money, Richard. More than you'll get from whatever scheme you and Marcus cooked up. Jake was slower to understand, but when Emma shot him a meaningful look, he nodded. My scholarship refund account has $38,000. We can transfer it all right now. Through the window, I could see Richard talking animatedly to his driver. The smoke was getting thicker, but the fire alarm had stopped, which somehow made everything feel more ominous. 1 minute, Richard's voice crackled through the radio. I want account numbers and routing information sent to this number. He rattled off digits. Emma looked at Detective Williams. Can your tech people trace money transfers in real time? A slow smile spread across Detective Williams' face. Emma, you might just be a genius. But as my kids started typing their banking information into their phones, I realized we were gambling with their entire futures to catch the man who'd been hunting us. The question was whether Richard Chen was desperate enough to take the bait or smart enough to see the trap. The money transfer trap was set, but at 12:17 p.m., everything went wrong in a way none of us had anticipated. Emma had just hit send on a fake $75,000 transfer to Richard's account when Detective Williams' radio exploded with chatter. All units, we have a problem. Judge Patterson just walked into the warehouse on Industrial Avenue with a briefcase full of cash. My blood turned to ice. The judge is there? Now? He's not waiting for the 2 p.m. meeting, Detective Williams said grimly. Our surveillance team says he looks panicked, like he's trying to return Richard's money and get out of town fast. Sophie looked up from her phone. But if the judge is at the warehouse, then who's in that car watching us? Through the window, we could see the silver Toyota still parked across the street. Richard was definitely in the passenger seat, but the driver remained a mystery figure with a baseball cap pulled low. Emma, Detective Williams said urgently, did the money transfer go through? Emma checked her phone and her face went pale. It went through, but not to the account number Richard gave us. The routing number redirected it to a different bank entirely. Which bank? First National of the Cayman Islands. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. This isn't Richard's operation. Someone else is running this. My phone rang. Not a text this time, an actual call from an unknown number. Answer it, Detective Williams instructed, but keep them talking. Hello? Sarah Chin. The voice was crisp, professional, and completely unfamiliar. You've been very difficult to manage. Who is this? Someone who's invested a considerable amount of money in Marcus Martinez's custody case, and I'm not pleased with the return on that investment. The voice had a slight accent I couldn't place. Your children just transferred $156,000 to my accounts. Consider it a down payment on what you owe me. My legs nearly gave out. Emma, Jake, and Sophie stared at me in horror as the reality sank in. We'd just handed over their life savings to a complete stranger. What we owe you? I managed to ask. Marcus promised me a $3 million return when he won custody and sued you for fraud. When that failed, he promised me Judge Patterson would rule in our favor for $50,000. When that failed, Richard promised me you'd be eliminated quietly and Marcus would get default custody. The voice was getting colder. 3 failures, Ms. Chen. Do you know what happens to people who cost me $3 million? Detective Williams was frantically signaling for me to keep them talking while she coordinated with multiple agencies on her radio. I don't even know who you are, I said. I'm someone who makes high-risk investments in legal cases, Ms. Chen. Usually very profitable ones. Marcus came to me 8 months ago with documentation showing 3 successful children and a legal loophole that could generate millions in lawsuit settlements. There was a pause. What he failed to mention was that he's an incompetent addict and you're apparently much more resourceful than anticipated. Sophie was crying silently now, staring at her phone screen showing her emptied savings account. Here's what's going to happen, the voice continued. Judge Patterson is about to have an unfortunate accident at the warehouse. Richard Chin will disappear permanently. Marcus will suffer a tragic incident in his jail cell tonight. And tomorrow morning, you're going to walk into family court and voluntarily surrender custody of Sophie to the state, claiming you can no longer care for her. And if I refuse? Then your nephew Jake will have a workplace accident at the auto shop. Very dangerous place, auto shops. Hydraulic lifts fail, brake lines get cut, accidents happen. Detective Williams grabbed the phone from me. This is Detective Williams, KCPD. You're under arrest for witness intimidation, conspiracy, and... The line went dead. In the silence that followed, we could hear sirens approaching from multiple directions, but also something else, footsteps on the fire escape outside our window. They're not just watching us, Jake said quietly. They're coming up. Detective Williams drew her weapon as shadows moved past the window. Get in the bathroom. Lock the door. Don't come out until I tell you. But as we moved toward the bathroom, Emma grabbed my arm. Aunt Sarah, I just realized something. The voice on the phone, I've heard it before. Where? At the bank. That's Victoria Walsh, Marcus's lawyer. She's been running this whole operation from the beginning. The fire escape window exploded inward just as Detective Williams' backup finally arrived, but we'd already learned the most terrifying truth of all. The person trying to destroy our family wasn't just Marcus's lawyer. She was someone with enough money and connections to make people disappear. And we'd just given her $156,000 to do it. The SWAT team stormed the building at exactly 12:43 p.m., but Victoria Walsh was already gone. What they found instead changed everything, a laptop in the abandoned Toyota containing 8 months of detailed emails between Victoria, Marcus, Richard Chin, and Judge Patterson, planning what they called Operation Family Gold. The emails laid out the entire conspiracy. Victoria had identified dozens of informal guardianship situations across 3 states where relatives were raising children without legal documentation. The plan was to systematically challenge these arrangements, claim fraud, and split the settlement money. Marcus's case was just the pilot program. Sarah, Detective Williams said, scrolling through the evidence on Victoria's laptop, you weren't randomly targeted. You were specifically chosen because Sophie's pre-med success made the potential lawsuit worth more. They calculated you could be worth $4.2 million in damages. But the most damning email was from Victoria to an unnamed partner. Martinez's children are successfully alienated from guardian. Judge Patterson confirmed he'll rule in our favor Tuesday. Recommend eliminating Martinez and Chen after settlement to avoid loose ends. Guardian Sarah Chen should have accident within 48 hours of custody transfer. They weren't just trying to steal my children. They were planning to murder me afterward. By 3 p.m., the entire conspiracy had unraveled. Judge Patterson was arrested at the warehouse with $127,000 in cash, claiming he was trying to return Victoria's bribe money. Richard Chen was found hiding in a storage unit, begging for witness protection in exchange for testimony. Marcus, still in jail, broke down completely when shown the emails proving Victoria had planned to kill him once the lawsuit was settled. She promised me we'd be partners, Marcus sobbed to Detective Williams. She said after we got the kids back and won the fraud case, we'd split everything 50-50. She never told me about the other families, or that she was planning to. He couldn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. The best part came at 6:47 p.m. when Emma's phone rang. Victoria Walsh, calling from what she thought was a secure location, demanding to know why the money transfers had been frozen. This is Emma Martinez, Emma said, putting the call on speaker. The transfers were frozen because the FBI traced them to 14 different offshore accounts connected to your operation. They've seized everything, Victoria. Every penny. The silence on the line was beautiful. Oh, and Victoria? Sophie added, leaning toward the phone. The FBI recovered our money this afternoon. All $156,000. Turns out wire fraud carries a 20-year federal sentence. Victoria Walsh was arrested 6 hours later in a hotel room in Kansas City with $2.3 million in cash, fake passports, and detailed files on 37 other families she'd been planning to target. 3 months later, I stood in the same courtroom where Marcus had tried to claim I'd kidnapped his children. This time, Judge Martinez, Judge Patterson's replacement, was making a very different ruling. Based on the evidence presented, and the testimony of Emma, Jake, and Sophie Martinez, this court formally grants Sarah Chen full legal guardianship and parental rights, Judge Martinez announced. Furthermore, the court finds that Marcus Martinez voluntarily abandoned his parental rights through 15 years of continuous absence and neglect. Marcus, now facing federal conspiracy charges, had voluntarily signed away his rights the week before. Rebecca Martinez had fully recovered and divorced him, taking half his remaining assets. Victoria Walsh was awaiting trial on 17 federal charges, and Richard Chen was serving 8 years in federal prison. But the sweetest moment came when Sophie stood up in court and asked to make a statement. Your Honor, I want to formally change my last name from Martinez to Chen. Sarah Chen has been my mother for 15 years, and now I want it to be legal. Emma and Jake immediately requested the same change. That afternoon, I walked out of the courthouse with 3 children who were finally, legally, permanently mine. After 15 years of sacrifice, fear, and uncertainty, we were officially a family. Marcus had been wrong about one thing: I hadn't kidnapped his children. I had saved them. And now, no one could ever take them away from me again.